Welcome back, humor consumers, to the Life Happens, Laugh Anyway podcast. I'm comedian Tracy DeGraaf.
And I'm Cathrine.
My bestie.
Yeah, my bestie too.
I know. I'm your bestie, you're my bestie. We should write a song. Why is...
We can
What?
make it to an 80s song.
All right, let's do that.
Okay.
Well, Cathrine and I today are bringing a really exciting topic because we grew up in the 80s.
Right.
I grew up a little bit ahead of her. How much older am I than you? 3 years?
Yeah, 3.
So I was 3 years ahead of her.
But like 4 grades.
Whatever.
So you're a little bit more ancient. You're still the Gen X though.
Okay.
Yeah, we're both Gen X.
Well,
which is 1965 to the end of 79, 80.
oh. Meaning you were born then?
Yeah, born. You had to be born between 65.
Oh my
and
gosh,
79.
I just made it by a couple days because I was born at the very tail end of 1965.
Right.
Oh wait, then I
So,
would.
I know. I was just thinking, well, if you were
Never mind.
January.
Never mind, I would have been 66. It's okay. Okay, let's get into the topic, Cathrine.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, this is so exciting. First of all, I'm going to ask our listeners, do you remember the 80s? If you do or if you don't, doesn't matter. You're going to love this episode, so stay tuned. This is what we're going to do in this next 45 minutes to an hour.
What are we doing?
That's about the length of our little shows here. First of all, we're going to reminisce.
Yeah.
Isn't it fun
Oh, it is fun.
to
yeah.
reminisce?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're going back to the 80s, baby.
Right.
And we're going to share what we loved about growing up in the 80s. And we're also going to talk about music and fashion and TV shows and mullets.
There we go.
But not
Yeah.
home decor.
Not home decor because
it was bad.
That didn't make a comeback.
But maybe we should talk about it because it's kind of funny.
We can,
Do you
yeah.
remember all the geese? There were flocks of geese
I think-
everywhere.
Was that 90s though, or was that 80s?
Well,
They mesh.
I
think it's 90s.
Well, I got married in 89, so that would have been about right.
And you had a goose on your porch?
I didn't have a goose on the porch, but I had them like in the house. It looked like just my whole house was just blue.
you showed
and
me a picture of the bunnies and
the bunnies and the geese.
lace.
The
I had
lace and the
I had a lot
checkered.
of lace.
The checkered stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh gosh, stenciling. I stenciled everything.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so that's what we're going to talk about today. And this episode is sponsored by Muffin and Pooh,
Who
our
are they?
husbands,
Yes.
Ron and Kenny.
Right.
I have Ron. She has Kenny.
Shout out to them,
Yeah.
Kenny and Ron.
Yeah. Thanks for sponsoring the episode, guys. Keep going to work.
Yeah.
'Cause- hey, you did that pretty good. Sounds like we got one of those sound
I
effects
know.
buttons.
I wish we did.
Well, we kind of do. We've got you. All right. Well, let's just jump right in, Cathrine. What did we love about the 80s? What did you love about it?
Well, I loved the music, the movies, because there were some movies that came out of the 80s that were just epic. And then they tried to do sequels to them, and they did. And
Was Jaws in the
remakes.
80s?
I think that's 70s.
Well, I remember
Been it.
going
Been
to
it.
Jaws. Oh my gosh. I was scared out of my mind.
Yeah, I was too. Well, how could you not be afraid of that music?
Right.
And whoever directed it, I don't know.
Was it
It's
Steven Spielberg? Might have been.
He was such a giant. He probably did.
He might have directed that. We should have looked that up. But Jaws really was a powerful movie. What were some of the movies in the 80s?
Some of the big movies of the 80s, some of the epics were Back to the Future.
Loved it.
Yes.
Still love it. Still watch it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, McFly.
I know I love
And
Biff.
Biff. Yeah. And now when you see those guys, when you see the actors, you're like, wow. Because I thought, I think it was Biff. And even then, in the 80s, he had bags under his eyes then.
Well,
And he was a youth.
don't say nothing about no bags. Bags are back.
Well, really.
Just saying.
It was the Spielberg era. I mean,
Yeah.
he did E.T., Goonies,
I
Indiana
loved E.T..
Jones. Oh, yeah.
Loved it.
Phone Home. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. That was very, very good. Ghostbusters. I'll just name a few because they're, but like the big epic ones, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
Actually, that's who I'm thinking of.
I still watch that one too.
You still watch it?
I still watch it when it's on sometimes.
Oh, I didn't even know that it. Well, I guess
Well, you
it
can
would.
get anything now
This, yes.
at any time. Anytime you're feeling it, just
True. So not Star Wars was actually the tail end of the 70s, but Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi was, very, very popular. Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop. Did I say Ghostbusters?
You did.
Okay. My favorite, 16 Candles. I think that was my favorite. And The Breakfast Club. Those two,
gosh.
I loved those two.
And when you think about styles, they came right out of The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles. And
remember the cool guy with the leather glove? Yeah. With no, they were not fingerless, but the tips. Right. Why is that escaping me?
Gloves were a big
thing. And his flannel.
Yeah.
He was so cool.
I remember Michael Jackson with his one glove.
Yeah. Right.
Do you think that I've wondered about that. Like, did he just lose a glove and he's like, wait, the show must go on?
He was a trendsetter. He did that totally on purpose.
Yeah,
obviously.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's kind of a hallmark.
Yeah.
Trademark.
Yeah. So movies in the 80s, obviously it was huge. And it still is huge.
Right.
It is. And they still remake a bunch of stuff. TV shows as well.
TV shows, yeah. So are we going to talk about why the 80s are so popular right now?
I think we should.
Some of the theories.
Yeah, let's go into those theories, Cathrine.
Yeah, some of the things. Some of it you just kind of is like common knowledge. Like the age of our youth, like that was we're all. I should say me and you. It was a coming of age time, right? And a lot of the 80s kids are at their creative peak now. So that's one theory. It was a very nostalgic era. So there's that was one thing I found. The focus then was on art and not it wasn't saturated with content from every which way like we get now. And it's the way it goes. Like the 70s romanticized about the 50s. You had shows in the 70s like Grease and Happy Days, American Graffiti, the movie. That was kind of reflective of the 50s or romanticizing it. The 80s romanticized about the 60s. You had things like The Big Chill, The Wonder Years. Yeah. And the 90s, they romanticized about the 70s. Dazed and Confused, that 70s show. Yeah. I never watched those, but I remember the commercials for them.
Well, that makes sense to me because that's what we like to do as human beings, is we like to look back and we like the good old days. There's always going to be a good old days. Today is eventually going to become a good old day,
Yeah, right. And it makes sense that people who were growing up in the couple decades prior to that, they have jobs, they're creators.
Right. They're the ones that are making the stuff.
Yeah, so they bring it back. But the interesting thing is, in the 2000s, it was the 80s. So from 2000 to 2010, the 80s was very popular. And it still is. So the 80s have taken up 2 decades of popularization, if that's a word, and like no other has in the past.
Well, that might make sense too. I'm not an expert on movie making and creative content, but it seems like in the 90s you didn't have as much musically going on as you did in the 80s, and everything was huge back then. So we didn't have the technology that we have today. You kids today, whenever you want a song, all you have to do is press a button and you get that song. Back in the 80s, you had to listen to the radio. You had to have it on your shoulder.
Yeah. Or if you wanted your own personalized music, you sat by your boombox and you waited for that DJ to zip it so that you could hit record. Yeah. Hopefully you had a fast hand, and I literally spent a lot of time. I was going to bring you to this podcast. I was going to show you some of my cassette tapes, my mixes.
Yeah.
I had recorded Live Aid by a cassette.
Yeah. So because things were so different, because, and maybe has something to do with the fact that it feels today like there's so much out there. It's like totally saturated. There's
Yeah.
content everywhere. There's music everywhere. There's talk everywhere. There's podcasts everywhere.
Yeah. I always say it's the wild, wild west of, podcast world.
Yeah.
Free waves or
For
whatever
sure.
they call it.
Because we couldn't do this back in the 80s.
No. We'd have to be licensed and what's
Do you remember ham
government?
radio? Do you know what that is?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
But a little bit.
So it's just like, this ancient technology, but people would do it. And they'd listen to talk to people on the radio.
Shortwave radio too, where you can hear radio from longer distance.
Yeah.
Something like, I don't know the technological things about it, but
Right.
I just know that you could do that.
Well, it was a beautiful time growing up in the 80s. And I remember when MTV came out.
Yes.
That changed everything. MTV changed everything.
It did.
Because
Right.
then you had your favorite bands. Not only, so you go from having to listen to the DJ waiting for your favorite popular music to come on so that you could record it and then listen to it again and again and again, right? So you had that. And then you had the record store at the mall where you could go buy a 45 or an LP or whatever.
Yeah.
And you bring it home and you put it on your little stereo,
Yeah.
right? With the needle. And sometimes it gets scratched. And
Let's put the needle on the record. Yes.
So you had that, but then they came out with MTV, and all of a sudden it was like a window into a whole nother world of creativity because you had the video, the audio, the creative story. Do you remember Thriller? Do you remember that video?
For sure, yeah.
I mean, that was like a mini movie.
Yeah. The timing was so good for those artists then too.
Yeah.
Because they exploded in a
Yeah.
new way. You
Yeah.
know, like you were saying. Hey, back to getting cassette tapes and recording and all that. Do you recall taking the little, like if you had a pre-recorded album and you got tired of it, do you remember taking the little tabs off the cassettes so that you could record on them?
Yeah.
And did you have a double cassette thing where you can record, like say a friend had a great mix and you wanted,
Yeah,
I was just thinking about that recently.
Yeah. So
Obviously.
So when you grow up with the technology that you have, I mean, we thought that was like, the bee's knees.
Yeah.
better than sliced
eight
bread.
Well, better than 8 tracks.
For sure. And I remember our parents had 8 tracks. They had them in the car. We had an 8-track player that my mom used to play, like, whatever she listened to. Yeah. So it's just a totally different way now with streaming and downloading, and everything's at our kids' fingertips.
Exactly.
Literally.
Yeah. Right. Did you have one of those big stereo cabinets in your house?
Well, we did not have that. We had a small record player.
Oh.
But then, I worked, so I saved up my money and I bought myself a the speakers were as big as this table. They were so big, and my room was very tiny. But I had my own setup, and I saved all my money, and
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I got one for Christmas. I slept next to it. I was so excited. My stereo. Like, not the cabinet was a family thing, a big stereo cabinet, which I kind of took over and had it in my room.
Yeah.
And then finally I got my own stereo. But
yeah,
Christmas.
those were big days.
Yeah.
Back there.
Right.
And concerts were also a huge thing in the 80s.
They were, yes.
Kids would pile into cars and trucks and whatever and just go wherever the concert was. That's what you did. Somebody was getting the tickets, and everybody put their money together, and you went to the concert.
What was the first concert you ever went to?
Donny Osmond.
Yes.
Oh, he was so dreamy.
Oh my gosh.
Donny Osmond.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think my first was Rick Springfield. Not Bruce Springsteen.
Right.
You call me Bruce. Rick Springfield.
Jesse's Girl.
Yeah.
He wished that he had Jesse's Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Rick Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, we went to a lot of concerts, my friends and I, because we lived, Chicago was only like an hour and a half away from us. So that's where we would go. We would just get on the road and up to Chicago.
We mostly went to Wisconsin, like Alpine Valley, Poplar Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
And those concerts were fun. And so, you had, I suppose, obviously they still have concerts today.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's less every day that you get to experience your band, it's more special. Because like even now they have social media. We did not have social media.
Right.
So if you're really a big fan of a current band and you're following them on social media and you're trying to keep up with every move they make, well, you can do that. But back then you could not do that. So when you got to go to the concert, and remember the black concert t-shirts?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Do you know I took notes at a concert once?
Oh, brother. For what?
I wanted to have it forever. Like I took notes like an idiot. I could smell, which I later learned was weed.
Oh,
like and here's like people smoking weed around me, and I'm taking notes like a dork.
Something smells. I think my friend farted. That's the weirdest smell.
Somebody brought a skunk in here. Ew.
Oh my gosh. What concert was it?
I think it was the Firm, which was like Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. Like hooked up with the guy from Bad Company. Somebody Rogers. And they
I could just see you. Everybody around you's having a great time, and there's Cathrine.
Well, I was having a great time taking notes. Trying not to miss anything. I don't know. I couldn't have done the lighter thing though.
Well, obviously.
Because, like, how would I be able to do a lighter and take notes? I don't know.
You are a certain kind of special, girl.
Oh, well. What was your
That's funny.
favorite music or favorite song, do you think? Because the 80s, I mean, gosh. I don't even know if I could really pick one.
Yeah. I used to be on the pom squad in high school.
Okay.
Yeah. They called us the Skipettes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So I was a Skipette. And my pals were with me, in there. And so we always did our routines to different songs, So that was a lot of fun. We did a lot of Michael Jackson. But I think I probably got more into music even when I was in college. And Madonna was just everywhere.
Yeah.
And my friend Teresa and I used to go to all the parties and dance.
Yeah. Yeah, dancing.
Dance like an idiot, just like a goof,
Oh, what's that one song? Dancing. Oh, it's like a Billy Idol? I don't know.
But Teresa and I used to do goofy dances, like we would make them up, like we're going to do the lawnmower. And so we'd pretend like we were, we thought we were so clever.
Right.
So I did enjoy dance music in the 80s and had a lot of fun with that. So like, Madonna, Like a Virgin, Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Oh, yeah.
Cyndi Lauper. I liked rock and roll too, though. So I liked Def Leppard and Billy Squier. And I saw Queen.
Did you?
Sure did.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
With my friend Lisa. Lisa and her mom took us to concerts a lot. And they both enjoyed music. Really good music. So we went to see Queen. It was amazing.
Yeah, I would imagine.
They put on a good show.
Well, that Freddie Mercury, he was a show guy. I mean, he was definitely,
hugely talented.
Right. Some of my favorites, I think, were Duran Duran. Oh my gosh, I loved them. I liked Men Without Hats, but I also liked music from the 70s as well. But as far as like the pop music, boy, I could. I really liked Phil Collins and Genesis a lot too, but yeah,
his stuff was smooth. His stuff was like, you could just enjoy listening to it.
Yeah,
it was easy to listen to.
Yeah, No Jacket Required. I remember I really liked that album. I liked Andy Gibb.
Oh yeah, the Brothers Gibb. I used to have the posters and stuff in my room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, there was just so much. And who I can't believe who made a huge comeback was like now David Bowie. Yeah. I don't understand what that's all about. I mean, he was big, but
I think now you see a lot of those bands doing comeback tours and they're ancient. They're and I don't even know if they really have the pipes. You know what I mean? Like they try to sing, and I don't know if it sounds just right.
Did he die though?
Who? Know. Billy Idol?
No, David Bowie.
Oh, I think he did.
We'll
have to check.
Yeah.
But here's what I think. This is just a total guess. I believe that if you have a fan base and you still have fans out there, give the people what they want.
That's right.
You know, I mean, so if you can figure out how to get in front of them, and you're going to go right back. That's the beauty of music. It can take you right back to a different season of your whole life.
Right.
So if you want to escape today, listen to the music that you listened to back in. Yeah, he died in 2016.
Oh,
David
okay.
Bowie.
Well, that talking about artists being able to bring back, you know, music of the past or nostalgia. That, I don't know if it's a band or just one guy, but The Weeknd, who did the entertaining, who performed at the, what do you call it? Oh my God, the football thing. The Super Bowl. Super Bowl, jeez.
The football thing, that thing, yeah.
The Super Bowl thing. He performed, and he's like a 80s thing. And, you know, like the kids are our kids, your son in particular, you know, they're in their 20s, and they were saying that music today stinks. Like they don't have, people can do whatever they want now. You don't have to have a record label, and people are constantly putting music out according to what our kids are saying. And there's nothing really good to choose from, like the music of the 80s where there was real talent.
Well, you had to sit at the edge of your, you know, bed and practice the guitar forever and ever and ever and ever and ever until you got it right.
Noticed. You had to get noticed.
Yeah. So it was different.
Yeah.
Well, I did a brain dump of the things that I remembered about the 80s.
I can't wait to hear it. I got one too.
Okay. So I remember, I don't know if this was the 80s or the late 70s, but I remember when Ronald Reagan was shot.
Yes. I do believe that. Well, I think
well,
it was early 80s. You're going to Google
I'm gonna
it to
Google
Google.
it. So I remember that. And I remember
The Cold War.
The Cold War. I don't actually really remember that. I don't think I was paying attention. Okay, it was 1981 that he was shot.
So
and
just barely.
Yeah, and I remember them announcing it in school over the intercom that the president had been shot. So that was a big thing.
It was a big thing. I remember being in my mom's Chevy Caprice, and it came over on the radio.
Yeah.
And we just got to the baseball field, I think. And I was telling my friends what I heard on the radio.
Yeah,
that's
how
I remember it.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I remember Grease, which
that was 70s too.
Yeah, but it was like such a big part of
the 80s.
Yeah, and it was a big part of like junior high, like Halloween. Everybody was dressing up like Grease and stuff like that. I remember Aquanet by the
I put that down
truckloads.
Too. I put that down too.
I remember loads and loads of mascara. And just like really making it like I remember one time I went to my grandma's house and I had just put on mascara, like it was everywhere. And she could not stop laughing. She was laughing so hard. She said, "It looks like two big tarantulas climbed up on your face and they're sitting on your eyes." I'm like, "Thanks, Grandma." Puffy sleeves.
Yeah, shoulder pads.
Yeah, big puffy sleeves. And then bridal wear in the 80s. I remember going from hats to wreaths. You know, like a lot of people had the veil had kind of gone away, and it was hats for a long time with a veil on it, and then it was wreaths. You know, with a wreath.
Yes,
hanging off your head. I had a wreath on my head.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Kenny, you don't. Well, he had said to me, I mean, he's so easygoing. He doesn't care about anything, but I remember him saying, "Don't wear one of those things on your forehead."
Like the crowny thing.
Yeah,
that kind of went down like a vampire thing. I know what you mean. Yeah. All right. We already talked about Madonna and Cyndi Lauper, the very popular Mrs. Pac-Man. Not Pac-Man, Mrs. Pac-Man.
Oh,
I used to play that in the 80s.
Oh, very good.
Okay. I remember riding around. So in the 50s, you would call it cruising, just like cruising town, like looking for kids to hang out with. In the 80s, we called it riding around. So we would just say to our friends, "You want to go riding around?" Okay. And then we would go look for other kids.
Right.
We
would hang out in grocery store parking lots.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere. We were having this conversation with our grown kids who obviously they were born not in the 80s.
Yeah.
But they don't do that anymore. Because if kids today went riding around or cruising looking for other kids, they wouldn't find them. Because they're not out. They're not out and about.
Right.
Everything for us in the 80s was outside of the house, except for MTV. I mean, you could do an MTV thing in the house, but you can't do that all day. So you would get out of the house. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Casey Kasem in the top 100.
I put that down too. Yep.
Love that. Dick Clark and the American Bandstand.
Man.
All that stuff made music what it was.
Yeah.
And we weren't saturated with all these other things, so your attention was focused.
Yeah.
And you had to catch American Bandstand when it was on.
Yes, you did.
Because you didn't have any way to record it.
All of these things.
Yeah. So you had to pay attention. And then my last one is we had the original Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Remember
Zuma.
Yeah, the program. So
I do.
Those are the things that first came to mind.
Yeah. You know, I was reading an article that said that the ratings for these popular TV shows that they had in the 80s, nothing has compared to it since then. But part of it could be there's so many other things that people are looking at.
Because it's all splintered.
Right. Before, you basically didn't have that much of a choice.
No.
You had mentioned MTV. We didn't have cable, so I only got to see it if I went to a friend's house. So, yeah, but that was a bummer, not having MTV.
Yeah, we didn't have it either, but Betsy did.
Betsy.
I went to Betsy's house.
Oh, I hear a lot about Betsy.
I loved her. I still love her. I haven't seen her in a long time. Shout out to Betsy.
Hi, Betsy.
All right.
So I did a brain dump as well.
Yeah, what'd you say?
I said boom boxes and mixed tapes,
Yep.
which I loved to do. Atari, MTV, breakdancing, parachute pants, mullets, Steven Spielberg, John Hughes. Loved all his films. Steven Spielberg, which we mentioned already. Hair bands and Converse high tops.
Do you remember those banana clips?
Yes.
I don't know. When you
I
said
think
hair
that's
bands, I mean,
90s.
I know what you're talking about, bands, but
Yeah.
But I remember those banana clips that would like go along your head and pull all your hair together, and it would make it look like a mohawk.
Yeah.
Mohawks.
Speaking of
mohawks,
Yes,
mohawks.
Mohawks. The punk, punk became popular,
It sure
especially
did.
in England. It just, I remember being like, what? I mean, the spiky hair.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, the contrast between the 70s and the 80s. So the 70s, earthy colors, hair parted in the middle and just hanging there, not too much of a style other than Farrah Fawcett, kind of feathered look.
I don't think they were looking at her hair, but whatever.
Well, girls were.
That's
I
true.
wanted my hair feathered like that.
Yeah.
And it was. But the contrast, the
Yeah.
earthy tones, and then the 80s, just that bright, vivid pink and neon. And
The
all
pendulum swung.
Right. Such a contrast. Okay. Nike, I believe, came out in the early 80s, real early. Acid wash jeans, cereal boxes. And I say that because I guess that Ronald Reagan had lifted the ban on with marketing to kids, and he basically was like, let the marketers do what they do. So cereal boxes had all those things to read. They had the prizes. They really marketed
in there.
the cereal, Cookie Jarvis or something like that, Fruit Loops, that all became popular in the 80s.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed that kind of cereal, but
That's probably why you were taking notes at the concert.
yeah. Punk, like I said, spiked up hair. Rubik's Cube. Juice bars, which I never got to go to that either, but I know that they were around. Do you remember those?
Yeah, like Jamba Juice? Like that kind of a juice bar?
No, they were like a teen's version of a bar.
No,
So-
I don't recall juice bars.
Yeah. I think there were some in Joliet,
Okay.
Chicago, but none where I
Yeah.
was. And IROC, the car, the IROC. Seemed like all the guys wanted, well, and some girls. And DeLorean car.
Yeah,
I don't-
from the Back to the Future thing.
Yeah, right.
I was never into cars.
I was
didn't
never
care.
into them, but I just know that sticks out.
Yeah.
People had them.
You know what we had back in the day? So this went through, I guess we had it from the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. We had a party line.
Oh,
For our phone?
Wow, we did not have that. That was
Well, our little town where I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
they were behind technology-wise on a lot of things. And one of those things was the town had its own telephone company. And we had a switchboard operator who would, connect you and stuff.
Wow.
So when I was in junior high and high school, if you wanted to use the phone, you had to share one line with 4 houses on your block. So if somebody else was on the phone, you couldn't use it. Not just somebody else in your house. It was the one line was for 4 houses.
I can't imagine that. To me, that's like your milk being delivered.
We
to
had
your
that too.
doorstep. Like, wow.
Well, and then so like if you picked up the phone and you could hear people talking, you would just, because there's no light or indicator or anything like that. You don't know if somebody's on the phone until you pick it up. And then you would have to go, oops, and put it back down. Or you could go,
Or,
what are they going to say?
yeah.
Yeah, so we had party lines. And now look at the contrast to today. What do children have today? They have their own individual cell phone, which is also a computer.
Yeah.
And they can text and they can email and they can, what do they call that? The chat, not chat.
Snapchat?
Yeah, Snapchat. That's it. Oops.
Snapchat, Instagram.
Snapchat, whatever.
Remember
it is.
when we had fun when we discovered that?
Yeah, we discovered Snapchat at the beginning of the pandemic because we're so old. We had never really dove in
We
there.
were really late to the party. It had been around for a while.
I know, but it was so entertaining.
Yeah.
Making our faces into those other little things. We're so stupid. Anyway, well, let's talk about clothes for a little bit and fashion because it does seem like mom jeans are back. I did not think mom jeans were ever going to come back.
I didn't either. They made fun of it on, Saturday Night Live, things like that. And I even was like, ugh, I have them on today.
I don't know who had the thought of let's make jeans that go like, hug the hips.
Yeah.
And then the fat just hangs over and you get that muffin top. Who thought of that? It had to be man.
In the 70s, the low hip thing, and I think people were slimmer then,
For sure.
And then when the 90s came around and those bell bottoms and the low waist things were, back in style again, but people were bigger.
Yeah.
And so...
That's because of the sugar and the cereal and all of that.
Because wasn't it the 70s? That's when like Coca-Cola discovered high fructose corn syrup and they were using. Yeah, I think so.
It's all a plot. It's a ploy.
Yeah.
Well, styles like that, like the mom jeans that are back, that's shocking to me. Mullets. Is also shocking to me that the young boys want mullets again.
Yeah, my 2 nephews had them.
I'm shocked.
I know, and they looked cute. And every now and then, I think I was with you. We passed somebody, a young guy doing some lawn work or something. He had a mullet.
Yeah, and both of our guys had mullets back in the day.
Oh yeah,
yeah, big long mullets.
What was that saying? Party up? No, business up front, party in the back.
Yeah, haha. Very funny. As we said, the home decor in the 80s was atrocious.
Yeah. That did not make a comeback. I don't believe, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay, so my parents had, they renovated our living room in, like, I think I was in junior high, so that would have been the 80s-ish or late 70s. Anyway, they got one of those couches with the printed flowers and a scene on it, like in the autumn colors.
Yeah, with a deer maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my mom was like, she had waited a long time to get all this stuff together and she was so happy about it all. So she got the couch and then she bought one of those couch covers to go over it to preserve it.
Oh, yeah.
And so we never saw the scene again. That was it for the scene. And when we saw it when the couch was delivered, and then we're like, oh, now we have a brown couch cover.
Hey, at least that she didn't have the vinyl. Remember that?
I do.
Generations before us, they would keep the plastic on the sofas and things, and you'd stick to it in the summer. And
my friend's parents had that in their like living room where nobody went.
Yeah, you're right. Sacred.
Nobody could go in there, and it was just for looking at.
Just to look at.
And then cleaning. My friend used to have to vacuum and dust like every Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Fun.
Yeah. So home decor was not so great. The fashions, I felt like the fashions were trendy. Like they were different.
Well, for sure they were very different.
That's what you love about fashion.
Oh my gosh. And the kids today, they're buying that stuff. There are websites where you can get the whole look.
Yeah.
And some boutiques have the whole 80s thing. And like I said, it's been around a couple decades now. My daughter, Alice, the youngest one, she wears those half shirts, and the waist tie. I'm glad the waist up because I hate when I bend with the low waist.
Everything falls apart.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this has been so fun to reminisce and talk about the 80s. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say about the 80s?
That was really it.
Pretty much got it. All right. Well, we thought we would close our little podcast here with some encouraging scripture, as we always do.
Yeah.
So we thank you for listening today. And the scripture comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 3. So pretty exciting. We don't go to that book that often.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's verses 1-8 of chapter 3. And it's a time for everything. It says, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die. I know this is like the words of a song, but at first it was the Bible.
It was, right.
A time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away. I should be doing that through my closets and stuff. A time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Yeah.
There literally is a time for everything.
Yeah. And, life is short. And if you are, I think anybody who's over like 35, 40, that age group, I think you realize it more and more that time is just fleeting and it's just gone in a blink.
Yeah.
So the 80s feels like it was a million years ago to some of us.
Yeah, it does.
So enjoy the Lord, number one, and enjoy your time. Enjoy whatever season that you're in. I think that's, all we can do.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a call to action, as we also try to do every episode.
And what is that?
We're asking you to share our little podcast.
Yes.
Share it. If you are listening to us, wherever you're listening from, we know that we have listeners all over the world. We're looking at a map in our little pod lab here, and we need to do some updating because we have some new listeners from several countries that I've never been to. Shoot, man, I've barely been out of Illinois, to be honest. But so we just ask, if you are enjoying what you're hearing here at the Life Happens, Laugh Anyway podcast, would you share it with somebody that you know needs to be encouraged?
Yeah.
Somebody that you know needs a laugh.
Right.
And they just need silliness. That's what we provide.
They need a break.
Yeah, a break from their everyday routine. So share this podcast with your friends, with your family, with your neighbors. And
because unlike the radio of the 80s and yesteryear, we're relying completely on people spreading the word.
Yeah, we're kind of going backwards, like word of mouth.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we appreciate that. Our next episode is on self-talk.
That's going to be good too.
Yeah. So the things that you say to yourself and why it matters. I think it's going to be a powerful episode.
Yeah.
That really has the potential to do some great things. Well, you've been listening to the Life Happens, Laugh Anyway podcast, and I'm still comedian Tracy DeGraaf.
And I'm still Cathrine.
See you next time. Bye-bye.